Well, we have a senator from Alabama who I've really come to admire. Senator Britt, I don't know you well, but I've seen you and I've heard you. And you say things, and you have a way of saying things that I think are very, very important. And so welcome to the radio show. You're going to be heard throughout the country as well as Alabama, of course. And we spoke on Life, Liberty, Levin on Fox. And I just wanted to tap into your knowledge base again. You went to Israel, and you were briefed. You understand what took place, and yet you see what's happening in our streets, what's happening in our media. What do you make of all this?
First off, it is so disheartening to see our nation not just be able to call evil, evil. I think we've seen our country fray on the edges, but to see this, to see the way that Americans have reacted to pure barbaric terrorism, to the killing, Mark, of innocent lives. I mean, babies, children, families. We even had Secretary Blinken testify in front of us 2 weeks ago at the Appropriations Committee, and he told a story that you can't even wrap your head around because you don't want to believe that any human being is capable of. But as you know, these terrorists wore GoPro cameras. And so from what I saw with my own eyes, and then to his story recount of a family of four sitting around their table eating breakfast, the terrorists come in, they gouge the eyeballs out of the father. They cut the fingers off the little boy, cut the foot off of a little girl, murder the mother, murder them all, move them out of the way, and finish their breakfast.
Oh, good Lord.
Can you can't comprehend that level of evil. And Ronald Reagan said that evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. And it is time for our nation to be unafraid. When we said never again 80 years ago, it has to actually mean never again. It doesn't mean never again when it's convenient for us. It doesn't mean never again when we feel like it. It means never again. And to see the rise of anti-Semitism in this nation, to see the hate. Look, we all have First Amendment rights, and we are proud to protect those, but you do not have a right to encourage genocide. You do not have a right to support terrorism. You do not have a right to say things like gas the Jews. It's disgusting. It is despicable. Our institutions of quote unquote higher learning need to step up to the plate and do their job, particularly what's happening on college campuses. I was proud to sign on to the piece of legislation that said that any of these college campuses that are facilitating this should not get taxpayer dollars. If you are allowing this to take place on your campus, you should not get taxpayer dollars. And we're going to have to be strong on this stuff, and we're going to have to keep pushing it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I don't see the Biden administration taking the lead on this. I've heard nothing from the Attorney General. I've seen nothing from the Attorney General. The Secretary of Education seems to be 5 steps behind. They have a lot of power, as you mentioned, power of the purse. They can conduct investigations under the Federal Civil Rights Act. I don't see that happening in any significant way. People aren't even arrested when they're storming the White House. Not one arrest is my understanding. No. And now you have Jews actually being beaten, being killed. And I'm not seeing the urgency from this administration. And it concerns me a great deal. And I think it's going to take you Republicans in Congress to really push this. And by the way,
Mark, we're gonna
yes, go right ahead.
No, go ahead. No, keep going.
Well, I want to swerve into something because it's very interesting. I've read your book. I see where you get your passion from now. I see where you get your morality from. And I wanted to thank you for this book, and I want to thank you for what you're doing. God calls us to do hard things, lessons from the Alabama Wiregrass. And I think this is so pertinent right now. You talk about family and faith, the hard times you had to overcome. You're a quintessential American. Your family is quintessential American. You're not Jewish, and yet you see what's taking place here. And because of your upbringing and who you are, and you're a red-blooded American, you feel compelled to speak out about these things. Explain to us.
Absolutely. And I mean, you said it. It is going to take us continuing to speak up and to speak out, because when I watch the videos of what Jewish young people are having to deal with on college campuses, when we're seeing what's happened, people, driving their cars into what they believe to be a Jewish center, and then you see the silence or even some of the rhetoric we've seen both from our vice president and former President Obama when he came out and said, we all are, we're all complicit. I couldn't agree. I couldn't disagree with him more. It is clear that.
By the way, Senator, not to interrupt, isn't that grotesque? What these people did and have done, and now we're all complicit for that? How sick is that?
It is absolutely sick. The only people with blood on their hands are the terrorists and the people who fund them. And we know that Iran funds them. We know that we have eased off sanctions instead of enforcing sanctions, which is what we should be doing to squeeze the money out of Iran. We cannot try to appease this government. We cannot go try to find moderates in this government. Obama's strategy failed us. Biden tried to continue it, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop, and we have to call evil evil. And to your point about the book, God calls us to do hard things. In there I talk about every generation being called to do hard things, whether it is, we look at D-Day and you think a couple years ago, I visited the beaches in Omaha and Pointe du Hoc and visited Normandy, and you see those cliffs that those young men climbed up. They climbed up in the face of guns barreling down, and they kept going. You see what Reagan did. You see what he did in tearing down that wall. I mean, you see at 9/11 when we were all just brokenhearted and unsure, and so many were afraid. You had our first responders that didn't run away from those buildings. They ran towards them. And so as Americans, we have to look at this, and we have to know every generation is called to do hard things. And I think we are seeing in front of us what our generation is called to do. And so reaffirming what our country was founded on. It was founded on faith, family, freedom. It was founded on principles, fundamental values, the value of hard work, where you keep your head down and you work hard. And if you do, in this nation, you can achieve more than your father before you. We do not need to keep telling these kids, keep your hand out and let the government give you more. That's not the way this works. And then treating people with dignity and respect, people who you may or may not agree with, and building relationships that are built on that, getting back to that and as a country and realizing the ripple effect of your actions. And then two, taking responsibility when you hit your valleys. Because look, we all talk, you see people's peaks. And as I often say, Mark, if you don't see their peaks, go check their Instagram feed, because we'll see it there. But it's the valleys where God carves you up and really uses you. And if you're honest about it, you will understand your purpose and you will be better.
Senator, we're going to take a short, hard break. I'd like to hold you over and continue what I consider to be a very, very important discussion. The book is God Calls Us to Do Hard Things by Senator Katie Britt. You can get it at Amazon.com. So, Senator Katie Britt, why did you decide to write this book?
So, Mark, someone approached me right after the runoff that I was involved in and said, do you want to write a tell-all about the campaign? I said, absolutely not.
Good
and
for you.
Then they came back after the general and said, oh, do you want to write about this and this? And you're going to be the youngest Republican female ever elected to the U.S. Senate. And what if you write? And I'm like, I'm not interested. Thank you, but no thank you. They came back to me, Mark, at the end of January. So we were sworn in, gavelled out. As you know, Chuck Schumer doesn't like to work, so he sent us all home. I immediately went to the border, my very first trip, to see that for firsthand. And then when I got back to the state, we had some storms that had ravaged the state, visited and worked on that, and then did some maiden visits. And one of the things that I said in running is, I wanted the unseen to be seen. And I am a big believer that no child zip code should determine their opportunity, because I believe that education is the pathway to being able to seize the American dream. That opportunity. You've got to work hard to get there, but that opens the ability. And so I had gone to a school, and I went. It was a magnet school in downtown Mobile, and I gave a speech, and it was Dunbar Magnet School. And in that, I told them a lot of these things that I talk about in the book, talk about my failures. I talk about things I did wrong, things I wish I had known, things that I felt like that if I wish someone had told me when I was their age. And at the end, I told them, look, I can promise you one thing, and that is that the world will knock you down. But what I want you to promise me, and what this nation needs from you, is that you promise me that you will stand back up. And Mark, they started chanting, I will stand back up, on their feet.
Wow.
I will stand back up. It was amazing. It was remarkable. And so we posted about that. And so one of the publishers came back and said, let's try this one more time. What if you write about exactly what you just said, things you did wrong, things you did right, lessons learned, the foundational principles of this nation that you said you want the next generation to learn and embody and know about this country. And I said, you know what, that trying to lay the foundation for the next generation and give them something to look to learn from, to hold on to grow with, that I can do. And so that's why we read it. I think right now in this country, that's what we're doing. We're fighting for hearts and minds, and we have got to do better about talking to the next generation about what makes this country so great and the things, the individual freedoms and liberties we must fight for, we must preserve, and how you actually achieve the American dream. And Mark, for me, the American dream, it's not monetary, it's not material wealth, it's not fame or fortune, it's not even outcomes. To me, the American dream is about possibilities, and it's about the opportunity to achieve. And so lighting that fire and showing them that even, peaks, valleys, that God will walk with you if you ask him, and that we're all called to a different purpose. But the point is, we need you in the arena. So whatever that is, whatever your arena is, we need you to be in it, and to be, you don't have to be the best, but being your best will certainly open up doors.
I see here that you went to the University of Alabama. As they say down there, go Tide. It's always
right,
a hell of a football team.
Look at you.
Or Roll Tide. Listen, I have family there in Alabama.
I'm impressed.
My daughter went to the University of Alabama for a couple semesters. Then she decided to come back to Virginia, but she loved that school. And
that makes me like it.
Oh, it's true. And I know the battle between Auburn and Alabama and all that and so forth, but it is a great state. People in the North, I'd never been in Alabama. People in the North, they look down on Alabama and the southern states and so forth. You've got in Huntsville, Alabama there, one of the most sophisticated, what is it, Redstone? I'm trying to remember the name. And,
that's exactly right. Redstone Arsenal. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And it's very sophisticated. So much of the technology for NASA comes from that arsenal. So much technology, period, comes out of there. You have a high level of scientists and engineers and all kinds of experts and so forth. Tell the whole country a little bit about the state of Alabama.
Oh, gosh, thank you for the opportunity. I live in a great state with great people. And to your point, we have a great story to tell. We have in Huntsville, as you mentioned, Redstone Arsenal, Marshall Space Flight Center. I mean, that's where they're working, not just to go back to the moon, but to go to deep space, to Mars and beyond. We look at what it does. I often say that obviously national defense means a great deal to Alabama, but Alabama actually means a great deal to national defense. And you look at more engineers per capita right there in that region. You look at Birmingham, and there's so much history that comes through our state, with Birmingham to Montgomery to Selma with the Civil Rights Trail. You look in the Shoals, where some of the most famous recording artists have gone to Fame Studios right there and recorded some of their first albums, from Aretha Franklin all the way around. You look down at the coast, where we have beautiful white sand beaches both right there. We have a deep water port in Mobile, but Mobile and Baldwin County are just some of the most beautiful communities down there. And you have where I'm from, the Wiregrass. Obviously, it is an agriculture community. We believe we are the peanut capital of the world down there in that region. But it's an agriculture, small business, and also military community. We have Fort Novacell there, also have Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, but Fort Novacell, previously Fort Rucker, is where we train all of the helicopter pilots. And so growing up there in the Army and growing up there was really special, because when you grow up in a place like that and, you know, you sit in class with the children of our servicemen and women in this great nation, you realize that that sacrifice is not just of our servicemen and women, but it's that of their entire families, because you watch them as their children, as their parents are gone for months on end, some of them never having the opportunity to return home. And so you realize what it means to be American and the price and sacrifice that is paid for this country to be so incredible. And so we have just a wonderful state. We have advanced manufacturing. We have Auburn. We have more HBCUs than any other place in the nation. We have a ton of different institutions of higher learning. And I think what makes Alabama so special are our timeless values and principles and lessons that I grew up with, that we share in the book, that ensure that our nation's best days are still ahead. And it's important. I think in Alabama, we all believe we have to do our part. And so stepping into the arena and preserving these values and fighting for them so that we can pass them on to the next generation, we believe we have an obligation to do that. And so I could not be more proud to be from the great state of Alabama. And to your point, I think some people should give it a second look.
It is a great state. And I remember going to Huntsville, and I remember University Boulevard there.
Yes.
And they had every single restaurant you could imagine. That's why I loved that boulevard, because, I mean, I'm going to eat here, and I'm going to eat here, and some of the best.
All the things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and, you know, and we have big city, you know, to your point, Huntsville is close to Nashville, close to Birmingham. We have big cities, and we also have small towns. And, you know, both of my parents were small business owners. And when you grow up in a small community, particularly when you see, the values that are instilled in you that you'll see throughout this book, somebody else's mama will yank you up just like you're their child, because everybody is invested in bringing out the best in each other and, you know, having each other's back and showing up with. I'm sure you've witnessed some good Southern hospitality.
Hell yes.
But we have some really incredibly kind people. But just it's a really wonderful place. So I appreciate
I've got one more question.
An opportunity to talk about it.
One more question. Is Gibson's barbecue still there?
Yes.
Like my favorite barbecue. Is it still there?
Oh, my. Okay, Mark, I am sending you some white Big Bob Gibson's barbecue sauce. We are making this happen, and you will love this. So each senator on the Republican side of the aisle, we each pick a Thursday. Now, of course, you sign up via seniority. So when you're like me and you're at the bottom of the barrel, you get what's left. But on that day, you get to bring things from your home state. And it's an wonderful opportunity. Obviously, it's a more low-key lunch, although we do get into some things most likely. But the person who's hosting tells about their state and brings food from their state. And I had exactly what you're talking about. That is what I brought. That was one of the things I brought and what I served to everybody, because it is just that good.
You're not kidding. Well, Senator, you're a delight. You're a great addition to the United States Senate. Your book is outstanding. God calls us to do hard things. And I want to thank you for what you've been doing on the border over in Israel with the budget, and how you're going to hold these colleges and universities as best you can to account. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Mark. We're going to keep fighting, and thank you for what you do.
My pleasure.